terrorists hijacked an airplane and launched an attack on the White House. The anti-air missiles on the White House rooftop were fired. 2 fighter jets were deployed to intercept the terrorist aircraft. The gunners began firing relentlessly at the White House, causing it to fall. The fierce flames rose sky-high, and the White House eventually collapsed. The White House of the United States has long been known as an impenetrable fortress. So why did it take only 13 minutes for terrorists to easily overpower it? On that day, the Prime Minister of South Korea unexpectedly visited the U.S. to discuss the North Korea issue with the U.S. President, fearing that North Korea might launch a war against South Korea. But at that very moment, an armed AC-130 aircraft suddenly appeared, circling over the skies of Washington. Because it was an unidentified aircraft, 2 F-22 Raptor fighters quickly approached to interrogate it. However, in the very next second, the armed aircraft immediately revealed its weapons. 2 12.7mm G6 cannons began firing wildly, unleashing rounds at a rate of 3,600 rounds per minute. Right after the burst of gunfire, 1 F-22 was instantly destroyed. The pilot of the remaining jet ejected in an emergency, but the fighter still crashed to the ground and exploded. After that, the armed aircraft quickly headed straight toward the White House. The security forces inside the White House were immediately alerted about the terrorist attack. Everyone panicked and hurriedly escorted the president and the South Korean Prime Minister into the underground bunker beneath the White House. This bunker is 120 feet, about 36 meters, deep and can withstand the impact of millions of tons of artillery fire. It is a real facility, officially known as the President's Emergency Operations Center. At the same time, Andrews Air Force Base nearby deployed another F-22 to provide support. All security personnel on the ground immediately went on high alert, weapons ready to respond. The Stinger missile launchers on the rooftop were also aimed at the sky. The scene quickly turned chaotic. Curious onlookers were still staring at the aircraft. But in the very next second, a rain of bullets swept mercilessly through the crowd. The Stinger missiles immediately locked onto the enemy target. 2 missiles were launched in quick succession, but they were instantly blocked by the enemy aircraft's countermeasure flares. Under the aircraft's furious barrage, the massive White House became nothing more than a giant target. The security forces stationed on the rooftop were completely wiped out in moments. The situation became extremely critical. At that moment, an F-22 Raptor finally arrived just in time. Without any hesitation, it locked onto the target, and an AMRAAM air-to-air missile shot out at 4 times the speed of sound. The violent explosion instantly destroyed the gunship. However, to make its death worth something, the enemy aircraft suddenly changed direction and crashed straight into the Washington Monument before falling into a crowded park. The entire scene turned into a living hell. It was truly a horrifying terrorist attack. Immediately afterward, the President of the United States contacted the Pentagon to prepare for an investigation. But the danger was far from over. Suddenly, a car outside the White House exploded, sending the curious crowd into panic once again. At that moment, 2 men with Asian features approached the metal fence outside the White House. The powerful explosion had blown a huge hole in the White House perimeter. Right after that, terrorists hidden among the crowd began firing at the security forces. 2 RPG rounds instantly destroyed both guard posts on either side of the main gate. Immediately, the terrorists stormed inside. Each of them carried an 416 Hong Kong dollars assault rifle and quickly mowed down the security personnel on guard. Meanwhile, the security forces were mostly armed only with semi-automatic pistols, making them no match for the attackers. Under the hail of enemy gunfire, the guards at the gate fell one after another. The crisis at the White House grew even more severe. The situation could no longer be delayed. After learning what was happening, the Pentagon immediately dispatched the Delta Force to surround and eliminate the attackers. However, it would take them another 15 minutes to arrive. Even worse, no one expected that among the high-ranking South Korean officials hiding in the bunker, there was a terrorist in disguise. As gunfire erupted, the president was quickly taken hostage. Several top officials were killed or severely injured. At the same time, the terrorists on the surface drove 2 trucks to the front gate. They intentionally blew out the tires and dropped flat to the ground. Immediately after, 2 M240B general-purpose machine guns opened fire at full power toward the White House gate, unleashing 600 rounds per minute. Under the overwhelming assault, the guards at the gate immediately suffered heavy casualties. At that moment, another RPG was fired and struck the main gate with precision. All the gate guards were killed, leaving only security officer Mike as the sole survivor. He hurriedly fled into the building as the terrorists stormed inside. They fired additional shots into each body, leaving no chance for anyone to play dead. This is exactly why playing dead never works on a battlefield. Soon after, in the hallway on the 2nd floor, the last remaining guards confronted the terrorists head-on. Under the fierce assault, the security forces at the gate were immediately overwhelmed with heavy casualties. Another RPG round struck the main gate with pinpoint accuracy. All the guards were killed, leaving only security officer Mike alive. He quickly retreated into the building as the terrorists stormed in. They fired into every body on the ground, leaving no chance for anyone to play dead. This is exactly why pretending to be dead never works on a battlefield. On the second-floor hallway, the last guards clashed head-on with the attackers. One security officer fired an Uzi submachine gun at 600 rounds per minute, but its magazines only hold up to 40 rounds, so it emptied quickly. The terrorists threw a stun grenade, blinding 2 officers, who collapsed helplessly. A few remaining guards in the monitoring room tried to resist with HKMP-5s, but they were instantly wiped out by a hail of bullets. The White House had completely fallen. All guards were dead. The terrorists had seized control. Outside, Delta Force finally arrived, preparing for a rescue operation. Snipers on nearby rooftops raised their State Route 25 rifles and locked the building down. But just before the assault began, the Pentagon received a call from the White House bunker. The terrorists demanded that U.S. forces withdraw immediately. Under threat, the Pentagon reluctantly ordered a retreat and raised the perimeter security level to Condition 4. The American flag was ripped down and thrown aside. It was a national tragedy, yet a moment of triumph for the terrorists. In this hopeless situation, Mike, still alive, continued moving stealthily through the building, looking for an opportunity. He reached the surveillance room, silently eliminated a terrorist with a dagger, and shut down the entire security system. Then he entered the president's office, used a password to access the satellite phone, and contacted the Pentagon. After confirming his identity, he reported the situation and learned the president was in the bunker, while the president's young son was hiding somewhere in the White House. Mike was ordered to find the boy at all costs. Meanwhile, the terrorists issued another demand: the U.S. must withdraw its 28,500 troops stationed in South Korea as well as the 7th Fleet based in Japan. Otherwise, they would kill the president. The Pentagon panicked. Withdrawal would leave South Korea vulnerable to a North Korean invasion within 72 hours. But refusing meant the president and officials would be executed. The president ordered nuclear launch codes to be changed and attempted to contact North Korea to determine if they were involved. But to everyone's shock, the terrorists didn't want nuclear codes, they wanted the Cerberus code, the top-secret failsafe system that, when activated, would trigger the self-destruction of the entire U.S. nuclear arsenal. The terrorist leader seized the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, holding a knife to his throat and forcing him to reveal his portion of the Cerberus code. Unable to watch his general die, the president ordered him to give up the code. The Pentagon received the update and fell into despair. 2 portions of the Cerberus code had been compromised. To prevent full activation, they urgently instructed Mike to extract the president's son immediately, fearing the terrorists might use him as leverage. Mike went to the Lincoln bedroom, where a secret passage, built during the 1950 White House reconstruction, was located. After searching carefully, he found the boy hiding in a corner. He called the Pentagon and told them to prepare guards at the tunnel exit. Just then, the terrorists entered the room. Detecting danger, Mike grabbed the boy and quickly escaped toward an air duct. He instructed the boy to crawl out of the White House through the vent. But a terrorist stepped in, noticed the open vent, and stuck his head inside. In a split second, Mike, hidden in the shadows, used a chokehold to kill him. This chokehold was lethal. Once locked in, even someone as strong as Mike Tyson would be forced to submit. Soon after, the outer security forces reached the vent and safely extracted the boy. The Pentagon cheered. This was the first good news since the attack began. Mike continued moving through the White House and launched a surprise attack on 2 more terrorists at a staircase, forcing them to reveal the leader's location. Terrified by Mike's ruthlessness, one of them confessed everything. The mastermind was Kang Yoon-sok, the leader of the North Korean Rebirth Organization, the world's most wanted terrorist. His tragic childhood, his mother killed by landmines while escaping North Korea and his father executed, had fueled his vengeance. Meanwhile, the Secretary of Defense was being beaten brutally, forced to reveal her portion of the Cerberus code. She was near death, leaving the president no choice but to enter the second layer of the code, breaking yet another barrier. Only one final layer remained. The Pentagon descended into chaos. Fearing Cerberus could be fully activated, they deployed an elite strike team using 6 MH-60L Battlehawk helicopters. Modified from Black Hawks for reduced transport capacity but enhanced firepower. As they approached, the terrorists' drone spotted everything. A 6-barrel Hydra anti-air gun rose from the White House roof. Mike rushed to stop it, but it was too late. As the helicopters entered the airspace, the anti-aircraft gun unleashed a torrential storm of fire. Under the overwhelming suppressive fire, the Black Hawk helicopters were shot down one after another. In the critical moment, Mike climbed onto the rooftop, grabbed an RPG, and fired a single round that blew the anti-air cannon apart. The U.S. military's rescue operation had completely failed. News stations worldwide began broadcasting the disaster of America under attack. At that moment, the terrorists called again. They executed another high-ranking official on the spot and demanded that within 1 hour, the U.S. military must withdraw from South Korea, otherwise, all remaining senior officials would be killed. Facing the terrorists' threats, the Pentagon was forced to concede and began preparing for withdrawal. But Mike knew the terrorists would never stop. If the U.S. accepted their demands, they would only grow more arrogant. In the end, Mike secured a 30-minute window to attempt a rescue. He immediately stood up and began searching for a strategy. Meanwhile, to pressure the U.S. military into agreeing faster, the terrorists dragged the Secretary of Defense outside the main gate, forcing her to step into the open. They intended to execute her publicly in front of everyone. Just as the gun was raised, Mike, positioned from a distance, launched a counterattack. During the chaos between both sides, the Secretary of Defense took the opportunity to escape and was successfully rescued by the U.S. forces stationed on the outer perimeter. Meanwhile, Mike relied on his agile movement and perfect marksmanship to take down each terrorist chasing after him. But by this time, news of the White House under attack had already spread across the world. Tensions between South Korea and North Korea reached an extreme peak, and war could break out at any moment. When the 30-minute deadline expired, the Pentagon had no choice but to order U.S. troops to withdraw from South Korea. The 7th Fleet in the Pacific also began retreating. As part of the negotiation terms, a U.S. Black Hawk helicopter arrived at the outer area of the White House, preparing to wait until the terrorists left before attempting to rescue and secure the president. No one expected that all of this was a part of the terrorists' plan. A massive catastrophe was about to erupt. At that moment, a group of hostages, each with their head covered in black cloth, was brought out. A sniper armed with a Remington 700 horsepower tried to locate the president among them, but since everyone's head was covered, it was impossible to tell who was who. The U.S. military could only watch helplessly as the aircraft carrying the hostages flew away. They planned to track it using GPS. However, the very next second, accompanied by a deafening explosion, the aircraft crashed immediately after takeoff. Everyone on board was killed. The Pentagon collapsed into despair, convinced that the president had perished. This was exactly what the terrorists had planned. However, Mike, who witnessed everything, sensed something was off. He suspected that the terrorist leader was still hiding in the bunker and that the president was still being held at gunpoint, waiting for the chaos outside to cover his escape. And as expected, the mastermind was indeed inside, busy decrypting a classified system. It seemed he truly intended to blow up the United States. Under continuous hacking, the system was unexpectedly cracked. The terrorist immediately activated the program, causing nearly 3,800 of America's nuclear warheads to be set to detonate simultaneously within 5 minutes. Keep in mind, Japan suffered devastating consequences from only 2 nuclear bombs. China was turned into hell because of them. Now imagine nearly 4,000 warheads exploding at once. The outcome would be truly unimaginable.
Vào ẩu đả.
But during the struggle, the president, while grappling for the P229 pistol with the terrorist leader, was unfortunately shot by him. At that decisive moment, Mike managed to eliminate the enemy and rushed over to save the president. Even though he was completely exhausted, protecting the president was instinctive to him. It was the sole mission of a dedicated bodyguard. Summoning every last bit of strength, Mike broke free from the terrorist's hold, locked him in a chokehold, and then swiftly ended him with a single strike of his combat knife. At this moment, with only 1 minute left before the TOYTOP and SEUS systems detonated, Mike urgently contacted the Pentagon, demanding the shutdown code. Finally, in the last 3 seconds, he succeeded in saving the entire planet, preventing a global annihilation. Mike then carried the president out of the White House, now nothing more than a hellish ruin filled with corpses. It must be said, Mike was truly a superhuman. He was essentially the modern-day Captain America. Olympus Has Fallen is not just an intense action film, it is a cinematic warning about the fragility of ultimate power. The movie pushes political tension and violent action to their limits, pulling the audience into a desperate survival struggle with no room for mercy. What stands out most is director Antoine Fuqua's brutal dismantling of the White House's defenses. In just 13 minutes, the symbol of American strength is transformed into a fortress of hell under enemy control. The opening attack, with the AC-130 gunship and the horrifying breach, sets a relentless, suffocating pace that fills viewers with dread and urgency. The film's depth lies not only in its explosive action sequences but also in the stark contrast between the panicked, disorganized government officials trapped in the bunker and the lone action hero Mike Banning. Portrayed by Gerard Butler, Mike embodies raw loyalty and pure survival instinct at a time when every system has collapsed. He is the last bodyguard, unbound by diplomatic rules or flawed military orders, the sole fighting spirit standing against Cerberus's terrifying conspiracy. Thematically, the film taps into Americans' collective fears after September 11th, fear of internal attack, betrayal by seemingly harmless individuals, and the unsettling truth that even the most advanced security systems can be broken by a meticulously planned conspiracy. The mastermind Kang's true goal is not merely to kill the president, but to destroy the will and self-defense capability of an entire superpower by triggering its nuclear arsenal. A personal vendetta magnified to a catastrophic scale. The value of a film lies in its reputation, but the value of a review lies in emotion. And that is where today's story ends. Thank you for watching. So, what do you think about this movie?